Hey, what's up guys, welcome to another video. In this video, I want to go through SOFI. This is requested by a user, but I was actually so impressed by this quarter's earnings that I think I might start to reinitiate coverage on SOFI. And I would actually, maybe look into starting a position here. So first off, we have sort of the technicals here, and I do have another layout with a lot of lines. But I want to keep it simple for this video. Okay, so this was what I used to have with SOFI, but I kind of want to restart, and I want to give a more simpler outlook on SOFI. So first things first, we have the daily chart, and this is the short-term chart. And unfortunately, SOFI does this thing where after very good earnings, it tends to move down. Okay, and that's pretty unfortunate. But the thing with SOFI is that eventually it does get down to a point where it's low enough that it actually starts to move up, right? And I think for SOFI, you kind of want to wait for that. I think for now, the time frame when between it moving down towards its bottom and it moving up is going to be slightly compressed, but we'll see. And I'm not going to start a position immediately. In the short term, I still expect this to continue to fall. I unfortunately do not have a price target here. I think it could be around $9. And yeah, so that is the SOFI technicals. Let's move into some of the fundamentals here, because some of the fundamentals are actually pretty impressive. So you can see here over on the net revenue, they managed to grow net revenues 30% quarter over quarter. Okay, so this was something that I did not expect. You can see that last quarter they had 22%. Okay, so I probably got out around quarter 4 or quarter 1, if I recall. I might be getting that wrong here. But 30% puts SOFI into growth stage, growth company territory, right? And SOFI CEO Anthony Noto was sort of sandbagging, and he said that he only expects 25 to 27% revenue growth. But this is a CEO that very often sandbags their revenue growth, right? So I would expect them to actually maintain maybe 25 to 30%, and hopefully there won't be another drop to, let's say, 20% or even below that, because that would entirely crush the stock. But if Anthony Noto is actually sandbagging and he wants it to be around 30%, then I'm going to start to be very, very bullish on SOFI. Okay, so you can see that they always give out these member growth 35% year over year. This is something that will, I expect to keep going up, because Anthony Noto wants to maintain high rates, right? So Anthony Noto has said this bearish thing about Robinhood, because Robinhood is not actually a bank. They can't actually control their interest rates. Might not have been Anthony Noto. It might have been data-driven investing from Twitter as well. And that's not that big of a pain point for Robinhood, because Robinhood is not a bank, it's more of a broker. And you would expect most of the people in Robinhood, the users on Robinhood, to move their money from cash into stocks, whereas in SOFI, you would expect them to leave the cash in SOFI itself. And maybe if they have a home loan, they could pay off that home loan, and you wouldn't really expect them to move their money into stocks. And yeah, I know SOFI has an invest platform, but that invest platform is not something that they wholeheartedly focus on. It's sort of a side business, and it's not necessarily SOFI is not a brokerage business. That's not what they want to focus on. And my point being, if they're able to keep the rates high, then members are gonna keep flowing in, and the more members that flow in, the more loans that they can sell. And by the way, SOFI doesn't only sell loans to users; they also sell loans into whoever wants to buy them, whichever institution wants to buy them, because loans are actually very profitable, and they are actually worth quite a lot of money because of the yield that they generate. And SOFI specializing in student loans, which means those loans can't be wiped off, is very, very valuable. The next part here is also sort of Galileo. I want to talk about Galileo a little bit. So you can see that the growth for Galileo is actually slowing down this quarter. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I think that's why we saw such a huge amount of volatility during their earnings. You can see that, yeah, this is the volatility that, I'm sort of talking about. It was a downswing of 17% because investors just didn't really know what the tech platform was doing. And unfortunately, we are seeing their tech platform in terms of accounts sort of move down a little bit. Evidently, this is not the revenue that Galileo is generating. So I think it's just a little bit of a pain point because SoFi has a price to book ratio of let's see here. SOFI has a price to book ratio of 2, which is their current price to book ratio. And if you look at something like JP Morgan, has a price to book ratio of 1.87. Okay, so SoFi has a higher price to book ratio than JP Morgan. Now I do understand that SoFi is a smaller company. It's a growing company, and evidently it's growing 30%, which is why I'm sort of initiating coverage right now. But in terms of Galileo, in terms of getting SoFi a higher price to book ratio than 2, I think it's going to be pretty hard, right? Because banks typically make money off of their book, they make money off of their balance sheet. Once again, I do understand SoFi has different ways of increasing that growth. Okay, so for a long time, over the last 3 quarters, SoFi has sort of traded down towards the 1 price to book ratio, which is the golden ratio for banks, and they are currently sitting at 2, right? So once again, back to the technicals, I sort of expect SoFi to move down a little bit. I don't know what the support level is going to be, but we are going to find a support level. And the support level is going to be when the MACD is in the red and the stock price stops moving, and then we see some sort of consolidation. And then that is where I would look to enter the position, or rather enter the stock. Okay, so once again, a golden ratio of price to book ratio for banks is 1, right? So we have an example here of Bank of America, currently sitting at 1.22, right? So Bank of America is a stock that Warren Buffett holds, and I would sort of put this as the golden valuation of banks. So the other reason that I feel like SoFi is lacking is in terms of performance. Okay, so if you look at the year-to-date performance of SoFi, they are not necessarily beating the S&P 500 in terms of year-to-date. So if you look at the 1 year, SoFi has done okay, but in terms of year to date so far, they have had a very, very hard time compared to something like Robinhood, which has absolutely skyrocketed. I don't expect this to end well with Robinhood, but I think the fact is that Robinhood is outperforming SoFi. I think there's going to be a time where SoFi possibly accelerates. I don't know, but unfortunately, it has not been beating Robinhood. So that is it for SoFi. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next one.